Hi, and welcome back. We're going to continue on with part two of the Spanish Empire weekends here. In part one, we had looked at Habsburg King Charles V, who had a lot of property, including the Netherlands, parts of Spain, Austria, um, Italy, and American colonies. And then we looked at his son Philip II, who wanted to take out England by building the Spanish Armada, and he failed. The Spanish Armada was defeated by English fire ships and by weather. And that's going to be kind of the beginning of the end for the Spanish Empire. As you can see, the name of this lecture is the Spanish Empire Weekends. We have four more reasons that we want to look at, though, that really bring the Spanish Empire almost to a complete halt. They don't completely get wiped out, but their empire takes a severe blow with these next four economic problems. So let's take a look at what we've got going on here. So the Spanish Empire weakens. Spain's empire would fall apart for four main reasons. And I can promise you, American economic leaders look at this and look at their history to say, how can we avoid making these mistakes here in the United States in the future? Because when one country falls to some of these, it certainly can affect others, and we don't want to make the same mistakes that were made in the past. So the first big problem that Spain has to deal with is inflation. Inflation is the decline in the value of money. Basically, what ends up happening is things cost us more. A dollar doesn't get us as much as it used to. There's all sorts of examples of this that kind of surround us on a daily basis. I know when I was a kid, it only cost me a couple of bucks to go see a movie. Now, if you go to a movie at night, sometimes it costs you $8, $9, $10, $11, $12, depending on what movie theater you go to. That's a sign of inflation. Certainly, gas prices continue to go up, although right now in 2015, they're pretty steady at around $2.30, which I'm okay with, but we've seen gas prices go up and up and up. When I was in high school, I remember seeing gas prices for 99 cents. So inflation occurs. If you don't control it, you can have some major, major problems. So the inflation in Spain was caused by a rise in population. You had more and more people living in Spain. Thus, a rise in the demand for goods allowed merchants to raise prices. So think about it this way. You have more people and they're all buying stuff. If you're a merchant and you're selling your goods and you're selling all your goods at, let's say, 10 bucks a piece, whatever it is you're selling, you're selling them for 10 bucks a piece and people are buying them like crazy, why wouldn't you start charging $11 or $12 or maybe $15 if people are going to pay that price? So you think about all the merchants doing this, now everybody has to pay more for the things that they want. So it's declined the value of your money. You have to use more of it to buy the things you want. One of the other problems that Spain deals with is taxes. Now, Spain makes a couple of really stupid mistakes here. For example, Spain had expelled the Jews and the Moors, who were valuable artisans and business people. The Jews are the Jews, the Moors are Muslims. Spain said, "You're out, we don't want you anymore." Well, these are people who sold things. They made things by hand. They were very good at business. So if you get rid of them, you're getting all the money that they would normally you're getting rid of all the money that they would normally collect in taxes. So that's less money going to the government. It's like all of a sudden the United States got rid of Walmart. Think about all the taxes that Walmart collects on every single item that's sold. Naturally, that's going to have a detrimental effect on your government. You don't have as much money coming in, less money is then collected in taxes. So this was a racist move on Spain's part that actually brought them in less cash. Dumb idea. One of the other things that Spain did, and I don't like this at all, is that Spain said, hey, nobles, you're people who own land, you're typically pretty wealthy people, you have a higher standing in society, we're not going to make you pay taxes. Well, if you don't make your nobles, if you don't make your wealthy pay taxes, the tax burden then falls onto the poor people. Because you still need to bring in money for taxes. You still need to pay for stuff. So you just shift your tax balance to those who don't have money. So if you're not taxing the nobles, you're taxing the poor people. And they can't pay taxes to begin with, so the rich get richer and the poor get poorer. Bad tax policies here by the Spanish. So we've got inflation problems and we've got some really bad tax problems going on here by the Spanish. So of course, like I said, the tax burden then fell to the lower classes, which meant they stayed poor. That's not a good plan. Really, as a result of this, Spain never developed a middle class. You want a middle class. The middle class is your biggest group. They have the most spending power. They buy the most stuff. If you don't have a middle class, your wealthy people hang on to their money, the poor people don't pay anything, and you have no taxes coming in. Bad, bad tax policies. So those are the first two of the four main economic reasons that we're going to look at why the Spanish Empire weakens here. The next one is a poor spending choice. The Spanish had higher prices. So Spanish cloth and manufactured goods were more expensive than those made elsewhere. Well, this is a simple economic decision. If you can buy a pair of pants for $10 from one store and the same exact pair of pants from another store for 20 bucks, which one are you going to choose? It's not difficult. You choose the cheaper one. So you think about all these people who have money in Spain, they go, we can buy stuff from our Spanish friends. We can buy them from people who manufacture these goods here in Spain. Or we can take our money and we can buy it from somebody else. That's exactly what they did. So Spaniards started purchasing goods from France, from England, from the Netherlands, from Portugal, all of their neighbors. And think about it, if you spend your money outside of your country, that money leaves your country. If you ever heard the phrase, buy American-made goods, Menards pushes this all the time. It's because we want our money to stay in America. We want our money to recirculate in America. We want American workers to benefit off that money. Because we know things like this have happened in history where money leaves the country. If your money leaves the country, it doesn't come back. And people eventually don't have anything left to spend and your economy completely shuts down. So the Spanish made some really poor spending choices. On top of that, there were wars going on. And if you don't have money, you have to borrow it. So to pay for some of these wars, Spanish kings borrowed from German and Italian bankers. Well, think about it. If you borrow money, what else do you have to pay on top of it? You have to pay interest, right? Well, that's problematic because what ends up happening here, a result is Spanish wealth was not recirculating within Spain. It was leaving the country, which allowed Spain's neighbors to prosper. Most of the gold and silver that came in was shipped off to Germany and Italy to repay those debts. You think, well, they still have all these colonies, right, Sagan? I mean, they still have all this wealth coming in. They did, but as soon as that wealth came in, they had to go repay those debts. So Germany and Italy were making money off the Spanish, and the Spanish were losing their money. So the result here is Spain's economy is crumbling. Again, inflation, we've got some bad tax problems, now we've got poor spending choices. They should have tried to keep their money inside Spain rather than allowing everybody to buy their things outside of the country. The last problem is Spain loses an important territory, the Dutch Revolt. So the Dutch Revolt in Spanish-controlled Netherlands. At this point in time, the Netherlands were controlled by the Spanish. The Netherlands basically said, no more. We want our own property, and so that's what's going to happen. Part of the reason this is you got a big difference in religion. The Dutch were Calvinists. Calvinist is one of the denominations of the Protestant church. So the Dutch were Protestants, Spain was Catholic. They don't even speak the same language. So why should the Spanish continue to control that territory? That was kind of the idea that the Dutch had. So the Dutch decided we're going to break away. On top of that, Philip raised taxes, he sent in troops, he executed 1,500 Protestants. The Dutch people were not happy, and so they decide that in 1579 up to 1581, they break away. So the Dutch and Spanish continued to fight for another 11 years, but in 1579, the Dutch declared their independence. So Spain loses the Netherlands. Well, they lose all the land that the Netherlands have. They lose all the wealth that the Netherlands are bringing in. It's like almost like cutting off a limb. You're losing a major part of your economy when you lose that piece of property. So in the end, again, you have actually five main things that hurt the Spanish. The Spanish Armada was the beginning, but in the end, you have inflation, which hurts the Spanish economy. You have all those bad tax policies that hurt their economy. You have poor spending choices that hurt their economy. And finally, when the Dutch break away, that is a big blow to their economy. So our result at the end of all of this is that at the end of the age of exploration, the Spanish Empire was no longer leading the way. Their empire took a major, major hit. They weren't completely done, they weren't completely wiped out, but they were definitely not number one in the world anymore. However, with their downfall, countries like Great Britain would be able to rise up and become the world's imperialistic leaders. Imperialism is really what we're looking at. When you go set up colonies around the world, when you start taking land that doesn't belong to you, you start to dominate those areas politically and economically and socially, that is what imperialism is. You start inflicting your ideas and your beliefs on the people there, start manipulating their customs and taking their resources. That's all imperialism. Spain was doing it, the Portuguese were doing it, the Dutch were doing it, and now the British are going to be number one in the world. And that's definitely going to be one of our last units that we will cover this semester, is looking at British imperialism. All right, let's wrap up today's lecture by revisiting the constructive response question associated with this. The question says, identify the reasons Spain's empire nearly collapsed. We have to start with the failure of the Spanish Armada. The Spanish Armada was this giant fleet of ships really set out to punish Protestant England. Due to weather and fire ships used by the English, they fail. And so what that really leads to is a loss of men, a loss of ships. It costs a lot of money to build an armada of that size. But that doesn't ruin Spain. Spain has several other economic problems going on. For example, high inflation. We looked at that. We talked about how their tax policy, they taxed the wrong people, kicked out the Jews and the Moors who had good taxable income. We talked about poor spending choices. They spent their money outside of Spain. And we looked at how the Dutch revolted and eventually broke away, leaving Spain with a smaller empire. So all of those are the reasons that Spain's empire nearly collapsed, and we want to be able to explain each one of those. You've got that right in your notes there that you can use to answer this question. So I hope you learned something. That's going to do it for us here today. We'll see you next time.